Hey guys, so I have been book hauling throughout the entire month of September and into October, and I really shouldn't have, because after May I decided I wasn't going to buy any more books, and then I bought books again in like August and I haven't stopped, and I can't blame myself because I got my carers allowance in, so I actually had money to buy these books, and also I've had quite a few meetings with business prospects, so I'm kind of rewarding myself for having good meetings. That's how I'm justifying this anyway. I can't justify this, but that's how I'm justifying this, and I'm going to stop trying to justify it and just get into this book haul because there's like 25 books to get through. I'm going to start with my Kindle books first, and then I'm going to go into my comics, then the hardbacks, and then the paperbacks, because that just seems to be the easiest way to go about it. And the first two Kindle books I got was Testing Pandora and Tone of Voice, which is the prequel and then the sequel to Failure to Communicate, which is, if you've been on this channel for more than 5 minutes, you know I love Failure to Communicate. Failure to Communicate was one of the books I read right back in January and absolutely adored it. It's a sci-fi series all about Sandry, who has autism, but she is on this big spaceship and she is helping to communicate and barter peace between two different species, and it is absolutely brilliant. It's the most accurate autism representation I have ever seen, and a really interesting sci-fi, and I absolutely adore it. I cannot say how much I adore this series. I've only read Failure to Communicate, but I've been desperate to buy the other two in the series and just haven't had the chance yet. But when I had a really successful meeting, I decided to treat myself with these two books, and I am so excited to start the Sandry story right back from the beginning and go all the way through until the latest book. I'm so excited. The next book I got was then The Diviners by Libba Bray. Now this one hasn't been on my list for that long. I decided to get this one because there was a huge amount of hype about it across BookTube. I can't go anywhere without hearing about it, and I just generally was really quite curious. This book is all about magic and a bit of a murder mystery and things like this, but I've heard it's also really quite scary, which I'm slightly worried about because I don't really do scary, horror-y books, films, TV, anything like that. So I'm slightly worried, but at the same time I'm very excited to actually read this one and find out what the fuss is about. I then also bought The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss because I heard about this book on Thoughts on Tome's channel, so Sam's channel, and I heard it had Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, which is immediately a selling point for me, as it is, but it's also got the daughters of like really famous literary characters as well in it, and it's all about women solving murder mysteries and things like this, and it's come like really highly recommended, so I had to pick this one up. I absolutely could not leave this one off my TBR and off my Kindle. It just sounds amazing, and I'm here for basically anything with Sherlock Holmes in, except ironically the original Sherlock Holmes stories, because Victorian writing isn't really my thing. I've heard that this is a bit Victorian, but I think I can cope with this one a bit better because it's written in it's been written in modern times, even though it's not set in modern times. I'm hoping that this one I can actually get through without getting confused with all the Victorian terminology. I've also then bought Messiah Complex, which is an X-Men comic, and also the X-Force/Cable Messiah War comic. Now these are the sequels to the big House of M storyline and X-Men Second Coming. Now, I already owned House of M and I already owned Second Coming, but I didn't have the two on either side of it, so I recently bought these. As soon as I finished House of M, I rushed to Amazon to buy the next two because I was so into this, I could not put it down. After that, I also bought Sinners, the Fey Beast book, which is by Echo Westerfield. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. I apologise now. But this one was down to free on Kindle, so I immediately picked it up. It sounds quite interesting, though. At the moment, I can't quite remember what it's about because I suck. All I know is that it's about Fae and it's slightly spooky, and it was free on Kindle at the time, so I quickly snapped it up before it cost money again. I then also bought volume 1 of Fables, which is by Bill Willingham, which is sort of like Once Upon a Time, but slightly more violent and more real-worldy, I guess you could say, where all of these fairy tale characters are now in our world. And I love Once Upon a Time. I loved series 1 to 6, haven't watched 7 because I was scared it was going to ruin it, and I've heard that it has ruined the show, so just didn't bother, and apparently left it on a cliffhanger or something, and it's now been cancelled, so I just sort of left series 7. But I absolutely loved the first 6 seasons. I adored it. I loved everything it did, and I just really wanted something else that was kind of like that. And then I saw Fable and saw that that was sort of like the same sort of thing, but slightly more real worldy, violent-y kind of thing, and slightly more badass. So I had to pick it up. I could not leave that. It just sounded amazing and right up my street, and exactly what I kind of want now that I'm in withdrawal from Once Upon a Time, so I picked it up and I cannot wait to read it. At the same time as buying Fable, I also bought Volume 1 of Lock and Key, which is by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. Now this one is a comic all about a family whose father is murdered and end up moving to a big creepy house on the other side of America, and whenever one of the little boys goes through a doorway, he dies and becomes a ghost. And then as a ghost and as in his human form, he finds a little girl down a well, which is kind of creepy. And there's a whole lot of keys that can do different things inside the house and things, hence why it's called Lock and Key. And it was very, very horror-y, very, very creepy, very violent and bloody. So if you do want to check it out, be warned about that, because it is rather violent and bloody in places and involves quite a lot of murder. So if that's not your thing, I'd stay away from it. But I personally really, really loved it. It was great for the Halloween season, and I gave it either 4 or 5 stars. I can't quite remember. And the last Kindle book I got was The Curse of Brocoven by Sabrina Ramoth, I want to say. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. I am so sorry to the author. But again, this sounded witchy, but I can't quite remember what it was about, because it's been on my wish list for a very, very long time. And when it went free on Kindle, I immediately bought it, because I ain't going to turn down free books. You know, it was on my list. It's been on my list for about a year now, hence why I can't remember what it's about. But when it went free, I picked it up, and I really cannot wait to investigate what it's actually about, remember what it's about, and then read it at some point. Don't know when, but I am going to get to it, I'm sure. And that was all the Kindle books. I'm now going on to the comics. The first one I got was AVX, which is by Brian Michael Bendis, who also did House of M, and I think he also did Messiah Complex and Second Coming. But either way, this is actually the sequel to Second Coming, so this is still dealing with Hope and the fallout of Scarlet Witch changing the world and like destroying the mutants kind of, and I am so excited to read it. It's a bit of a chunker of a book, but weirdly, this has been on my list for about a year now as a really exciting comic to check out, and I didn't realise until I was in HMV and read that it was like the sequel to House of M that I suddenly realised that I needed to pick this up immediately. I wasn't going to buy anything that day, I was just like browsing, but then I saw this, realised it was the sequel, and picked it up. The next comic I picked up was Spider-Man v Deadpool, or the Spider-Man Deadpool team up, more likely Volume 6 WLMD, which is called something else in America. Can't remember what it's called in America, but it's called something else. But this one is Volume 6. I read this in like an hour and really enjoyed myself. I've loved the LMD storyline in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and to see it in comic book form was great. I love the twists and turns in it, and I think this is one of my more favourite comics of this run. There's been a couple that I found a bit iffy, but this one I really, really enjoyed and gave 4 stars, I think, in the end. And my last comic was something I was so happy to see. I didn't think I would ever find this in like any shop, but then I found it and immediately picked it up, and that is Captain Marvel Rise of the Alpha Flight. I've had this on my list for like 2 years, ever since I started getting into comics, but never thought I'd see it. But once I saw the Captain Marvel trailer, which nearly made me cry with joy, I was desperate to find at least one Captain Marvel comic, and then I saw this one in HMV again, snapped it up immediately, didn't even think about it. And this one, I don't actually know what it's about, but it's got something to do with the Kree, or the Alpha Flight Space Program, and I don't know what that means, quite frankly, but I'm so excited to read this just before Captain Marvel comes out, because I like to theme my comic book reading around the Marvel releases, so this one is at the top of my list for March, and I cannot wait to get really into Captain Marvel and seeing what all she's about, because I cannot wait. You have no idea. Girl power in comic books. So excited. so excited and so happy I found this in HMV. You have no idea. Onto the hardbacks now, and the first one I got was Brandon Sanderson's Legion, which is The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds. Now, I already own the Mistborn series, but I haven't actually read it yet. But it's on my list to read next year, probably, at this point, because those books are chunky and I've got a whole load of stuff left to read by the end of the year. But this one caught my eye because it's called Legion to start with, and it's also about a schizophrenic with multiple personality disorder, which are not to be confused. Schizophrenia is not the same as multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, but they seem to be quite commonly mistaken. It's not true, but this character has both of these, and he's called Legion, which just reminded me of the TV show and the MCU character Legion, who has schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, or DID. I was immediately like, is this about David Holloway? It's called Stephen Leeds. And I was very confused, but then I looked it up, and this guy is actually more of a trained soldier, a psychological expert. Another one is a librarian, and he's an exceptionally versatile intelligence agent and things like this, and it just sounded really interesting to me, and something to sort of fill the gap when Legion isn't on like right now. I absolutely am so excited for this. I've heard Brandon Sanderson's sci-fi isn't as good as his fantasy, but considering this is 3 novellas and it's about 300 pages long, it's probably going to be easier to get into than Mistborn right now. So I figured I'd go for this first and then get into Mistborn later. And then I finally bought it, I finally caved, and I finally bought Every Heart a Doorway. I've been looking for this for so long. It's unbelievable. I've never been able to find this book in any bookstore I've been in, and trust me, I've been looking for like a year. But I eventually caved and decided that I was going to buy it, and I'm so happy I bought this. I did have to get it off Amazon in the end, because obviously it wasn't in any bookstore, but I'm so glad I have this. Everyone's talking about it. I've never read it. All I know is that it's a bit like a portal fantasy meets Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, while also having an asexual main character. And after reading Vicious and Vengeful, where Victor is asexual, I'm so excited to read another asexual main character, and I've heard so many good things about this. I cannot wait to read it. Another hardback I finally bought was Dread Nation. I've been looking for this for so long. It's unbelievable, but I finally bought it because I finally gave in and just bought it off Amazon, because with most of these I finally gave up and just bought them off Amazon because there was no way I was going to find them in any bookstore around here. And I'm so glad I've got this. I'm not quite sure about the deckled edges right now. I've never really had that before, so I'm a bit iffy on that front, but apart from that, I'm so excited to read this. This sounds so good and full of zombies and girl power and everything. I'm so excited to read this. I've heard so many good things, and I'm so glad I finally own it. And the second to last hardback I got was a Doctor Who book, because I've been on a Doctor Who high for, well, since 13 aired. Basically, I'm in love with her. I'm so excited to see more of her, and I got 12 Angels Weeping, and first of all, I adore this cover. Second of all, this is actually 12 stories from the villains of Doctor Who, and that just is so exciting. This is sort of Christmassy, so I'm saving this one for Christmas, but I'm so excited for this. And on the back, we've also got more Daleks and the Weeping Angels, and on the back it says, "And whatever you do, don't blink." And I basically needed to know nothing else for me to want this book, because the Weeping Angels are my favourite villain ever. I love the episode Blink. Blink is probably my favourite episode of Doctor Who. Basically, I'm just really excited to read this one. It sounds so much fun, and I can't wait to get to it, basically. It's going to be a Christmas one, and I'm really excited. And then the final hardback cover was Tempest and Slaughter by Tamora Pierce. Now, I've been looking for Tamora Pierce books for a very long time now, because I've been really interested in getting into her work, because she's apparently like a big staple sci-fi fantasy author, and I've never read anything of her. So when I saw this in Waterstones, I had to pick it up. It's also a signed copy as well, which is really awesome. And weirdly, after I bought this book, the next time I went into Waterstones, there was a whole load of Tamora Pierce books. And I was like, really? Come on! You know, like, I bet you, once I've read this, probably fallen in love with her, then look for them again, they won't be there. but I'm glad I picked this one up. It's the first one in like a trilogy, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's a trilogy, and I can't wait to get into this and see what the really big fuss is about her big all-encompassing world and her writing. I can't wait. And finally, we are now onto the paperbacks, and I'm so glad to be here because my back is starting to hurt from sitting down here for so long without a backrest. Really need to find a new place to film, or at least a more comfortable place to film. But anyway, paperbacks. I've got like 8 to 10 of them, so I'm just going to get right into it because I don't know if I'm running out of like camera space. I don't know. It just came up with an error message and I didn't get to read it, so never mind. First paperback I got was A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney, which is a Alice in Wonderland retelling, but instead of Alice being a young girl, she is a POC teenage girl from what I can tell, or at least she's older than the traditional Alice. So I'm really excited for this. I've heard nothing but good things again, and I'm not the best fan of Alice in Wonderland retellings, but I do have high hopes for this one and I can't wait to give it a shot. I also then bought Neil Gaiman's Stardust for obvious reasons, is the fact that he is Neil Gaiman and I adore Neil Gaiman, and I have got this one on my Kindle, or at least it's on my mum's Kindle, but I can't access it on my Kindle Reader app because for some reason it just doesn't work like that. And this one was like £2 because I exchanged one book for this one. This one's quite short as well, which is quite nice, and I've watched the film and really enjoyed the film, so I can't wait to see what it's like in book form. I also picked up the bonus Mercies, and this is about a group of mercenary girls who go out and fight and kill monsters because it's a woman's job and men can't do it, which just sounds awesome and full of girl power and everything. I only recently heard about this on Bex and Books' channel actually, and she introduced me to this book and I had to pick it up as soon as I saw it, like the next day. So I can't wait to read this one. It sounds really interesting, full of girl power, and at the moment I am so here for girl power, so I picked this one up. I also then picked up An Unkindness of Magicians because I've been watching A Discovery of Witches on TV at the moment, and while that show's slightly bugging me because of the usual reasons of love story, I still wanted to pick up a couple of witchy books, and this one was sounding really good. It's all like a murder mystery, I think it is. It's called A Magical Revenge Thriller, and I'm not usually a thriller kind of person, but magical revenge is something I'm really interested in, and it's all about witches, so I thought this would sort of cover my witchy needs basically. I also then finally picked up Sleeping Giants, and I have heard about this book everywhere and I've never picked it up, but I finally bit the bullet and picked it up, and I cannot wait to read it. I've just heard so many good things, and it's also written in like files and stuff, I think, and interviews, which is really exciting because I really liked that aspect of Illuminate. It was just when things started to go a bit out of linear order is when I started getting confused reading it, but this seems to be in sort of like straight normal paragraphs just through case files and stuff like that, so I'm really excited for this. It's also about aliens and robots and things, and after Doctor Who I'm seriously into aliens and robots right now as well. I also decided to give Holly Black another chance, so I picked up The Coldest Girl in Coldtown because I think my problem is that I don't like Holly Black's Fae books, with the exception of Spiderwick Chronicles, so I decided to give vampires a try instead because I quite like vampires. I mean, I'm not hugely into vampires right now, but vampires I get along with generally better than Fae, so I'm hoping that this one restores my faith in Holly Black because I have a feeling that I can really like her writing. I adored Spiderwick when I was a child, so I'm really hoping that this sort of restores my faith and makes me love her YA books as well. I also picked up Vic James's Gilded Cage. Now this one's about an alternative magically skilled Britain where people are now basically being slaves to the rich and things, and I've heard really good things about this. I think I've seen fanfics based on this actually, and the cover really intrigued me, and it says not all are free with the bird in the cage and the quite shiny bits, so I decided to give this one a shot as well. And then I also picked up another Neil Gaiman, which is Anansi Boys, and weirdly I've been pronouncing this as Ansani Boys for like ages now, and I've definitely gotten that wrong because it's actually clearly a Nancy Boys, as you can see, and this one isn't a sequel to American Gods, but it features a god that I think turns up in American Gods. So it's not a sequel and it's not really connected, but it's a similar sort of idea. Considering how much I absolutely adored American Gods, I had to pick this one up, even though it's got a spider on the front, and I am really not a fan of spiders. I still thought this was really interesting, and I really trust Neil Gaiman's writing, so I had to give it a go. And then finally I decided I needed some sci-fi, so I picked up this morsel Coil as well, and mainly for that edge bit there, because that just looked amazing, but also because I've heard so many really good things about this as well, and I just felt like I needed some sort of like biological warfare, sci-fi apocalypse kind of deal, and this one sounded right up my street, and I really love the cover, so I had to pick it up in the end. And that is all the books that I hauled, and I've now got over 30 minutes worth of footage, so I should probably stop talking and just get on with editing this, because this is going to take me a while on my rubbish laptop. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Comment down below if you've read any of these books and which books I should prioritise, or if you've got any ideas for other books I should check out, or comics or anything like that. Tell me that down below. I'll also leave a link down below to all of my social media if you want to check it out. And if you want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time guys, bye!